Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today it is time for Friday Reads on January 20 something or other. And I hope that you have been having a good week. If you live in the US, you are probably heading into a ferociously cold weekend. There's a winter storm that is almost everywhere, I think, even here in Texas. I think we are in about the best spot possible as far as it kind of mellowing out on the way down. I think it's going to be, we may not get any precipitation, or we might get a little freezing rain, but it's not as bad as everywhere else. So we're prepared mostly. So I'm going to move right on into the books because I have a lot. It was a very mixed bag this week. There are highs and lows and everything. There's everything from DNF to 5 stars in this report. So hang on. I'll give you a glimmer of hope that when you get to the end and it's the currently reading, that part is pretty solid. The problems are all in the earlier portion. Let's start on a positive note. I forgot to mention last week in Friday Reads that the discussion for Edenglassie by Melissa Lucashenko was still going on. I had finished reading the book, and I forgot to mention that the group was still discussing the book. So we did the second half of our discussion this past week, and I think we've kind of wrapped it up now. The Pineiro group, which is not currently discussing Claudia Pineiro, we had a wonderful discussion about this book. I think that we had a little bit of a spread of opinions about the book itself as a piece of writing. For me, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I think in my fledgling star rating excursions, I think I gave it a 3.5, which to me means it was above average. I liked it. I'm glad I read it, but it wasn't a favorite. And then I think maybe some people rated it a little higher. But as always happens, the book took on a lot of extra meaning and dimensions from the discussion. And it's a story that has 2 time periods. One is in the 19th century, and that was the period that I was more engaged in, that has to do with the colonialism in Australia and the tensions between the Aboriginal communities and the colonists, and a particular story about a man named Mullanyan. And I learned a lot about a part of history that I didn't know about specifically, but that unfortunately felt familiar, and I saw a lot of patterns of human behavior that I am very familiar with from American history. And then the current day story was about a 100-year-old woman who takes a fall. She's a great character named Eddie. And while she's recovering in the hospital, we get to know her granddaughter, Winona, and a young doctor named Johnny. And that part of the story has a lot to do with discussions around ancestry, Aboriginal identity, generational trauma, cultural appropriation. And as far as a piece of writing and the plot and characters, that part of the story was less successful to me. But I love the discussions that we had about the topics and how, and the articles that people shared and the stories that people shared, and it just gave it a lot more richness and dimension in the reading experience. So I am really glad that we chose Edenglassie. Another reading experience that I wrapped up this week was The Imagined Life by Andrew Porter, which was a buddy read with Shawn from Shawn Reads Books. And we had a lovely Zoom conversation yesterday about The Imagined Life. This book is by an author who lives not far from where I am. He lives in San Antonio, Texas, where he is the director of the creative writing program at Trinity University. And he has written some short story collections and I think 2 novels, and this is his most recent work. We had a great chat about this book. It is about a man named Stephen who is kind of 50-ish, and when he was 12, back in the 80s, his father disappeared from the family after a series of problems. And the strongest parts of this book, we both agreed, were those memory pieces where he's remembering his father and his mother, their relationship. His father was an English professor who was in the process of trying to attain tenure. And he remembers the parties that they had at their backyard pool in California, and the members of the English department that were his friends that would come over. And I'm going to be very careful about spoilers here, but there's a lot of things about Stephen's father that could be contributing factors to the dissolution of this marriage and the fact that he left and disappeared. Things going on at that time, personal issues, professional issues, and Stephen's not really sure what all happened because he's looking at it through memory, and because he kind of cordoned it off and didn't want to think about it for 40 years. And he just was never ready to investigate and think about this. So now he is, because he's at his own personal crisis. He's separated from his wife. He has a young son, and he's recently left a job. All this we find out right at the beginning, so these are not spoilers. So he is at a turning point in life and having some problems. And he feels like part of the root of this is his unresolved issues with his father. So now he wants to find out what really happened. And he goes on this road trip across California to visit old colleagues and relatives who might be able to give him some insight into what really happened 40 years ago. So it's not a mystery novel. It's a quiet novel. It is about memory, parents and children. It's about some other things that I'm not going to tell you because it would give too much away. There's some really striking and beautiful passages in this book, but I think we both agreed that the 1980s memory parts are much more strongly written than Stephen's current day travels through meeting these different old professors and everything. That weaker part of the book bothered Shawn more than I did, which created the disparity in our overall takeaway from the book. I liked it. I gave it a 4. And I can't remember what Shawn gave it, but he liked it less. But it was still had a lot of interesting things to talk about. And we decided in the Zoom to just talk and enjoy the conversation and not worry about making it a product for the channels. But Shawn did record it, so there might be like a highlight reel or something, or a snippet or something. And if he does that, then I will pass it along and link it and share it and all that good stuff. But it was a great discussion. Now we must pass through the Valley of Meh that I referred to in another video. I had a DNF this week. At first I thought, this is a little embarrassing, but then I decided I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. So I DNF'd Who is Government, which was edited by Michael Lewis. It's already gone back to the library. I wasn't going to make a separate trip just to keep a couple of books that I didn't really like. So there's a bunch of things that went back to the library. And so goodbye, Who is Government. I thought it was going to be good. The idea here was to personalize this vast, much disparaged government system by picking out certain individuals who do some sort of a crucial, unsung job and highlight them. That sounds like a great idea. And then he assembled a team of really interesting and varied writers to do the pieces. Why wasn't it interesting? I'm not sure if it was me or if it was the book, but it was really boring. I don't know. It could be the state of the times in my mind, but I kept moving around thinking, well, maybe a different section, and I'd read a little bit of it, and the first couple pages would be kind of interesting, and then I'd wonder, why is this chapter 30 pages long? There's not enough to say. So I cut my losses. I read one nonfiction book a month, and so before I ran out of time, I returned the book and I started reading something else, which you will see in a minute. So I guess I'll never know who is Government because I bailed. Then I was reading Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. And this book was part of my science fiction double feature project. I did not DNF it. I read the whole thing and I will never get those hours back. And this is supposed to be a science fiction classic. It was written in 1951. And I gave this book a 2. I mean, I did not like this book. The reason why I got a 2, it earned that 2. It earned the 2 from having a really great first couple of chapters where our main character, Bill, wakes up in the hospital where he has had an eye procedure. And we find out there's an interesting reason about what happened to his eyes, which I'm not going to tell you in case you disregard everything I'm getting ready to say and you read the book anyway. So he wakes up. So his eyes had been bandaged. He didn't see all these flashing green lights that everybody else saw the night before, this crazy meteor shower that probably wasn't really a meteor shower. Everybody who looked at it is now blind. So almost everybody in the world wakes up blind and pandemonium ensues. So the first couple chapters are really good. He wakes up trying to figure out what's going on. He comes outside and everything's crazy. Okay, so far so good. Then it just kind of devolves. Now I went on a little mini rant last time about the sexist characterizations. It got much worse. I guess I should just avoid spoilers, but okay, let me start with this. The timing in this book is really weird. This emergency happens, everybody's blind, and a lot of people instantly commit suicide. They don't wait around to see if it's temporary or what's happened or if anyone else is having this problem. They just wake up blind and decide they don't want to live like that. So people are falling off of buildings and jumping out of windows. And then the people who can see are trying to find one another and get organized. But they get organized so fast that within 48 hours, they are already forming factions and communities, and they have a plan for the future, and it involves a very sister-wife kind of setup. This just springs up instantly. Okay, but then that's not even the worst. That's not even the worst problem. The worst problem, let's just talk about the structure of the book. It's called Day of the Triffids. The most exciting part about the book is the Triffids, which are these big plants that can uproot themselves and walk around, and they have this crazy stinging tentacle that attacks people and it can blind them or kill them. And that is not the main part of the book. It's in the title. They do exist in the book. The main character is a specialist in Triffids, and the book is not about the Triffids. John Wyndham picked the most predictable, often covered part of a dystopian plot, and that's what he focuses on. How many books have you read where something terrible happens and then an individual or a small group begin to travel across a countryside and they meet various different models of dystopian setups, and there's something sinister or something wrong about all of them, and then there's power plays. It's that plot that has been done again and again. That's what he focuses on, and he sidesteps all the most interesting parts, and every time a character comes in who's kind of interesting, they don't get much play either. I didn't like it. I don't understand why. It's a classic, and go ahead and come for me. I know John Wyndham is much beloved, but maybe I picked the wrong book. I know, even giving it a lot of leeway for being from 1951, it just was not a well-constructed novel. Okay. End of rant, end of my bad review. I had a DNF. I had an unsuccessful book. Then I read a mediocre Shakespeare play, The Comedy of Errors. It was all right. It was not my favorite Shakespeare. It could be kind of funny staged, but it relies on a couple of Shakespeare classics. Confusions about twins and people being separated in a shipwreck and thinking one another are dead. Once upon a time, there was a shipwreck and a pair of twins with exactly the same name that were royalty, and another pair of twins with exactly the same name who were being raised to be the servants of the royal twins. They all got separated in this shipwreck and thought one another had expired, and then they all end up in the same place, and they keep running into each other and being extremely confused, and they figure it out at the end. That's The Comedy of Errors. Well, if you're still with me, I then read another novel that did fare a little better, and that is Love and Saffron by Kim Fay. The subtitle is A Novel of Friendship, Food, and Love. I read this because it was on my shelves and to satisfy 2 different Storygraph challenges in January. Melinda from A Web of Stories had a category about a book about food, and Ben from Ben Reads Good had Scranuary, which is a book about food. So this was it. This is a book about food and friendship, and it is an epistolary novel and the story of a younger and a more mature woman. They call her an older woman, and then it gets to her part, and she's 59, which is my age. Okay, thanks. But the younger woman is a young fledgling food writer, and then the older woman is someone she has admired who has a column, and she finds out that it is not even her full-time job, but they start a correspondence. In the first letter, our younger woman, Joan, sends the older woman, Emmy, a letter and a little pack of saffron as a little gift, and a friendship forms. It is a warm and gentle novel. It's nice to watch the friendship develop and their personalities emerge as they become comfortable and less formal and polite in their correspondence. And so it was a very pleasant and enjoyable novel. However, it's not a bad however. It's just, having recently read The Correspondent, which is also an epistolary novel, it wasn't a great idea to read them so close to one another, because The Correspondent is a more substantial novel. The characterization, the plot development, the surprises, it's just overall, it's a better book. This one is fine. It is, if you need a kind and gentle book that is not going to tax your soul, but does have some emotional things that happen, there's no reason to avoid this book. For me, it did have a pretty predictable plot. There was a couple of things that are the really key things in this book that I could see from the very first little seed of their beginnings. And it didn't really bother me because I wasn't looking for it at that particular moment. After what I'd just been reading, I wasn't looking for something really deep or hard hitting. So it didn't matter to me that I could see some of the main things coming from a mile away. But just know that that's the kind of book it is. I think there's a sequel, and I don't know. I saw it in the store, but I didn't pick it up because I didn't want it to give something away before I had read this book. So now I can check it out and see. So the next book, I did complete my reread of You Are Here, Poetry in the Natural World, edited by Ada Limon. This was fabulous. That's why I read it twice. So I thoroughly enjoyed going back through it, and I will keep this book forever and keep rereading it, whether I dip in and read certain poems or I just go all the way through again. It's a wonderful poetry book to have on hand. So that brings me to currently reading, and I am reading 3 books right now, and they are all really good and satisfying. I'm so happy to report. I am doing a buddy read of Flora and Ulysses by Kate DiCamillo with my friend Michael. We are reading all of Kate DiCamillo's work it started out in publication order, but I don't know that it's really sticking to that. That's Flora. That's Ulysses. He's a squirrel who develops superhero powers after an encounter with a high-powered vacuum cleaner that their neighbor is using in her front yard. You have to read it to get the context. Flora takes a lot of inspiration from a comic book series called Incandesto, which is about a mild-mannered janitor who has secret superpowers. Her parents are divorced. She lives with her mother, who's a romance novelist, but is about the most gruff and unromantic person you can imagine. Her father, that she spends time with, is actually the dreamy one. And a large part of the book is Flora trying to protect the squirrel from her mother's attempts to get rid of the squirrel. And Ulysses, his superpowers kind of gradually get revealed. They include flying and writing poetry. It all sounds pretty wacky. I haven't even described some of the other side characters, and it's a lot of fun. Her use of language and vocabulary and timing is always just impeccable and such a good time. The nonfiction book that I swapped out is the one I recently got as a gift from my friend Michael, Broken in the Best Possible Way by Jenny Lawson. It's essays. They're very, very short. So there's like a million different little vignettes. She's really funny, self-deprecating. She talks about just ridiculous, socially awkward situations that she finds herself in. She talks very candidly about mental and physical chronic health problems that she also deals with, the ups and downs and battles with the insurance company. There's a really funny chapter where she talks about not one, not two, but 6 different times that she managed to lose one of her shoes in an incredibly awkward manner in public. And things happening in elevators and public bathrooms, and it was laugh out loud funny. So I am enjoying Broken very much. This was more my speed for nonfiction for this month. That other book, it's probably me. It's probably not the book. And then last but not least, I am reading this beautiful short novel, A Room Above a Shop by Anthony Shapland, a Welsh author. I don't think this book has been released in the US yet. I haven't checked lately because I have my copy that my dear friend Allie sent me from Blackwell's. This is a book set in the 1980s in a rural town in Wales with 2 gay men. One has just inherited his family's ironmongery hardware shop, and the other one is a younger man, maybe 10 years younger, who is ready to get out and do something. He needs a job. He needs to get out of the family house. They first form a friendship. There's a question and there's a spark, and they're not identified by name. One of them is named M, one of them is named B, and the whole process of them wondering about themselves and wondering about the other man and feeling attracted and tiny overtures and not being sure, and it's written in this really beautiful style that is just lots of little short passages, and somehow we managed to get enough of their backstory and how they have come through life feeling really alone and masking themselves, and then the relationship that starts to unfold, because M hires B to work in the shop, and he rents him space in the room above the shop. There's a bed sit up there, and he rents it out to him, and then they begin to fall in love. So all of that is not spoilers. That's what the book is about, but it keeps, the descriptions all say things about it being really sad. So I haven't seen, I don't know what the sad thing is yet that's going to happen, because I will be done by next week, because it's quite short and quite beautifully written. Quiet Gym energy. That's the highs, the lows. It has been everything, like I said, everything from DNF to 5-star. What will the week hold that's coming up? The last week of January. Will it end with a boom or a fizzle? We shall see. I hope that you have a great weekend. Stay warm if you are somewhere in the midst of this winter horror. I am really curious to see what Wilkie's going to do, because he is just, well, by our estimates, because he was a stray, he's coming up on his 1st birthday, which we've assigned as February 1st. And so he's never been cold. He's never been cold. He's been chilly on days that are kind of chilly and then they warm up, but he's never felt truly cold, freezing weather. So I'm curious to see what he does. Is he going to get excited and run around and get crazy, or is he going to turn around and run back in the house and try to get under a throw blanket? Because that's what I'm going to do. So I'll let you know. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.